Zhang versus Deontay Wilder ends with a big knockout, Zhang getting the KO in the 5th round. And it pretty much played out how we thought it would, and for the same reasons we thought it would. But let's do a sort of round by round breakdown. So, round 1 starts somewhat predictably in that we know that Wilder doesn't have a good jab. All he really does have is sort of a, I don't know what you want to call it, a probe. This sort of elbow out kind of back fist. It's not even a punch because it's not thrown with the intention of landing and hitting Zhilei in the face or in the body. It's just sort of thrown out there to, as we say, occupy space. And it's almost thrown out there, I don't even want to say defensively, but maybe it's just to sort of keep Zhang off him, and I think it's an attempt for him to set a rhythm for himself. Okay, but if you're not going to throw something with any intention of landing it, then it's not truly an effective defensive, and certainly not an effective offensive weapon. Okay, but we already knew that about Wilder, so there's no surprises there. Now, here's the interesting thing in round 1. A couple of the commentators said, oh, there's nothing happening. But there was actually quite a bit happening on Zhang's side, if you can appreciate the more subtler aspects of his defense. So he kept a high European-style guard in the first round with his lead hand, that's his right hand, kind of extended away about a foot away from his face, and he would use that lead hand to basically to parry or catch Deontay's jab. I'm just going to call Deontay's punch thing a jab because I don't know what else to call it, but it's not truly a jab. So all Zhang had to do was simply rotate his hand to just catch that, or he would sometimes catch it at an angle. But take another look at the first and second rounds just to look at Zhang's defense, because he did such a variety of things with that lead hand. He also would move it in a circular motion. Sometimes he would kind of parry from underneath up, or the side of his hand, the inside side of his hand, or the outside side of his hand. But there's truly quite a bit of parry varieties that Zhang is using, just very super subtle. So why is Zhang doing this? I think it's, well, one thing is he's getting used to the Deontay Wilder's rhythm and tempo, which seems to pretty much never change. And then he's also seeing what he can do off that parry. So if he educates his lead hand to just get used to Deontay's timing and the angles, he can figure out what he can throw off that parry, or how to just avoid the punch altogether and throw underneath it. So I think a lot of the pieces that we see coming into play during the rest of the fight were being sort of set up or practiced by Zhang in that round 1. Now, the other really key thing Zhang was doing in round 1 was he was moving his head off the line just ever so slightly. Again, he didn't have to, because he's catching Deontay's punch, his jab, about a foot away from his face. So there's actually no need for Zhang to move his head either to the outside or inside, but he does both. And again, why is he doing that? Because he's practicing the timing and the rhythm to, where do I need to move my head? How am I going to move it? Where's my lead hand going to be when I move my head just offline to just make Wilder miss? So, again, the commentator said nothing happened in the first round, but there was quite a bit on Zhang's part going on. Second round, I think most significant thing was now Deontay was typically on the outside. I give him credit for not trying to run around the ring like he did in some of his other fights, which is completely not his style because he doesn't have good footwork. So for him to try to move around laterally a lot is just a mistake. But at some point, he did get himself into a corner. Zhang cut him off into that corner and kind of started unloading with both body shots and head shots. And I'll give Deontay credit. because he didn't react the way he did to Joseph Parker. He didn't lean back with his head way back and stick his arms out wide and shut his eyes. He shelled up and leaned forward, which is, it's better than doing the other thing, because you're just going to take more punishment if you lean way back. So Wilder shelled up in the corner. Okay, that's a little bit of an improvement, so I'll give him the credit for doing that. Now, of course, you can't give him credit in terms of winning the round, because you don't win a round by having effective defense. You win a round by having effective offense. But it just made me, happy to see Deontay at least had that instinct in that moment to cover up. Now, going into at the end of the second round, towards the end of the second round, I noticed Zhang started to use more of a double high guard, and that came to play even more in the third round. And the cool thing was that double high guard now is that effectively shifts the distance without Zhang having to close the distance himself. But by pulling his lead hand back to his forehead, now Deontay's going to try to punch at that same hand. He's still going to parry right in front of his head, but effectively he's allowing Deontay to come in a little closer. And now you see Zhang actually working on really slipping Deontay's punches, either to the outside or the inside, and sometimes even subtly level changing. You start to see Zhang throw a simultaneous jab to Deontay's body at the same time that Deontay's jabbing to Zhang's head. That double high guard also puts Zhang in a perfect position to throw his lead reverse punch, his lead left hand, very smoothly. Now, he wouldn't want to do that with the European style high guard, because for him to throw the lead left with his right hand way out, it's not a good position, and he doesn't have really a good body mechanics to land that lead left effectively. But in the third round, Zhang does start to do that. He'll throw a lead left, very smooth, and then a nice tight little right uppercut when he's in position to, in close enough to land that on Deontay. And I think he didn't really get enough credit for that. Zhang didn't get enough credit for that from the commentators. But I did really like that sort of nice, smooth lead left, straight right uppercut, right up the middle from Zhang. So then between rounds 3 and 4, it seemed like Deontay Wilder's corner was kind of imploring him, I think, to be more offensive. I'm not sure if it was during this round where they asked him to move Zhang back. But here's the problem with instructing Deontay Wilder to move Zhang back. Well, one, of course, he's outweighed by, 130%? Because Zhang is 180 compared to Deontay's... Zhang is 280 compared to Wilder's 215 or something. So, yeah, if I do the math right, that's about 130% body weight difference. But in order to move somebody back, what punch do you use? You move them back with a jab. You don't move them back with like a lead right. You have to drive them back with a jab. And Wilder does not have an effective stabbing hard jab. He doesn't even have a good flick jab because it's too back fisty. It's too predictable. And on top of that, Wilder never breaks his own rhythm. If Wilder could simply work in some feint jabs and just change up the rhythm of his jab, that in and of itself would throw off Zhilei's sense of timing, his jab or his right hand. Okay, but in the fourth, yes, there's a lot of big boats here. So in the fourth, to his credit, Deontay does try to pick it up a little bit, and he does throw a couple of nice smooth 1-2s, but it's really not enough to sort of impose his will on Zhilei. And sort of unfortunately for Deontay, all it really did was allow Zhilei to get a timing on Deontay's right hand that's coming off his so-called jab. I think by the fourth round, Zhang had a pretty good read on Wilder's jab, mainly because Wilder does not employ enough variety with that jab thing that he's doing. To Zhang's credit, what he does do sometimes is sort of slip Wilder's jab, throw his own jab to Wilder's body, and then other times he'll slip to the outside and throw his lead straight right or straight left to Wilder's head. Or his body at times. But at this point, by the fourth round, I think Zhang had a pretty good a read on Wilder's timing. Now, it's between rounds 4 and 5 that, again, Wilder's corner's really imploring him to, step it up, throw the 1-2. At least that's what I think I heard them say in between rounds. I didn't have the greatest audio for the corner work there, but it sounds like they're saying, hey, we want the jab and the right hand. So to his credit, Wilder did listen to his corner, and he did try to pick that up in the fifth, and he actually did land a couple of good 1-2s to Zhang. They weren't super effective because at one time, at least on one of them, Zhang was kind of braced and he caught it on his forehead. Another time he was moving backward away from it, so he didn't catch the full impact. But there were a couple that did land well for Wilder, so got to give Wilder credit for that. Now, unfortunately for him, as we said, now Zhang has been figuring out Wilder's timing and tempo and his hand placement from rounds 1 through 4, and with Wilder just sort of opening up a bit more, it just allowed Zhang to throw the perfect counter. So Wilder comes in with his 1-2 with his right hand. That was a little bit loopy, wasn't as straight as it could be, and what Zhang does is he doesn't counter with his own reverse punch. He counters with his lead. It's sort of I don't want to call it a wide hook. It's almost as if he was throwing a jab over Deontay's jab, except Deontay's jab wasn't there, and he's slipping at the same time. So it's almost like his lead hand, his right sort of overhand right, almost. It's kind of a cross between a jab and an overhand right and a little bit of a hook, but it catches Deontay square. Now here's where the kind of shows you that Deontay's pretty much done, even though we already knew that before we even started this fight. Deontay spins around, he gives up his back. Now, some of the commentators will say, oh, well, the force of Zhang's punch was so hard that it spun Wilder around. And it's like, nah, if, no matter what, you as a fighter know that you're supposed to have your eyes on your opponent. So for a fighter to turn all the way around like that and then walk away in the opposite direction, that's really, really bad instincts. Just like leaning way back and throwing his head back and throwing his arms apart were really, really bad instincts in the Joseph Parker fight. Same thing. You as a combat athlete, you never want to turn your back on your opponent, no matter what combat sport this is, whether it's involves striking or grappling or both. You never want to give up your back, standing or on the ground. You just put yourself in the worst position ever. So I'm not really going to give Deontay a free pass for turning around like that, because I feel that if he felt himself going that way, he should have either done a hard stop and come back the other way, or just spin all the way around, like do a 360 and come back and face your opponent. But your instincts should be driving you to know that that's kind of where you need to position your body. Like, you've got to have your eyes on your opponent. But so now instead he starts walking away with his back to Zhang. It's almost like he's looking to the referee, because he turns and looks to his right and kind of reaches his arm out or something, as if he's gesturing to the referee. I don't know what was going on in that moment, but exactly as that moment as he turns to kind of look over his own right shoulder, Zhang just comes with it. It's it's almost, he doesn't even need to do anything. You could throw anything at Wilder, and he's coming from Wilder's, blind spot, and he just clips him with his lead right hand. You could call it a hook if you want. It doesn't matter. It could be a jab. It could be it's just a punch from someone's blind spot. I mean, it's a bad angle to get hit at. So again, of course, Wilder goes down, head bounces off the canvas, beats the count, but the referee waves it off. Good stoppage, I think. A better stoppage would have been before the fight, I suppose. I've already gone over the fact that I think Wilder should have retired. Maybe even, probably after the Fury trilogy. Maybe he should have retired after he fired Mark Breland. I don't know. But certainly in this case, good stoppage. Wilder does say, I'm fine, to his trainer. But, hopefully his corner, Malik Scott, kind of talk him down from any sort of delusions about, you could have kept fighting. You could have knocked him out. You were almost going to knock him out. Hopefully they don't feed into that ego thing. So I guess the next question is where does Zhang go from here? Because really, where does Wilder go from here? Is he should retire. Should have retired before this fight. He should just do a sail off into the sunset fight, in quotations, that's all sort of prearranged. But in any case, I think this was a great win for Zhang. Major props to Zhang and his team. He's been with the same trainer, Sean George, since I think the beginning of his pro fighting career. And huge props to Sean George for being able to adapt Zhang's amateur style or amateur techniques, amateur mindset into the pro game, because that's no easy task, especially when a fighter has spent a considerable amount of time just adapting to the amateur sport of boxing, where you basically, if you can win on points, that's wonderful. you don't have to score knockouts, but I think this leaves Zhang in a great position. Both he and Joseph Parker, I think, have elevated themselves. It's hard to really bump anybody out of the top three, right? Because we still have Usyk, Fury, and Joshua. But I think now, Joseph or Zhang they could call for a fight with Anthony Joshua. They could rematch. There's a lot of options open to them if they want to just fight another fellow in the top 10. I mean, I think those fights are there for them. So it all depends just on what they and their teams want to negotiate. Let's take a look quickly at, I mentioned Zhilei's corner. So full disclosure, I do know Sean George back from training at Gleason's gym when we were both learning our craft. And Sean George went through the whole sort of New York Golden Gloves, University of New York City Golden Gloves, if that's what you want to call it, because I think he did win the gloves. I can't remember what year. And then Sean George went on to fight professionally as a cruiserweight, and I believe he did win a minor belt. He then did start working with the Duvas, and I believe it was the late Lou Duva that had the notion of trying to recruit the Chinese national boxing team. Not sure what inspired that, but I believe Sean George was already working with the Duvas by that point, and I believe that Sean George was a trainer that they not only took over to China, but he would work with the Chinese amateurs who were looking to go pro under the Duva banner. And I'm assuming that's how he hooked up with ZHANG Zhilei. And so it's been a long grind for them, and I think it's a well-deserved win, and I'm super happy that they were able to get this big win on a big stage, hopefully for big money. So, you know, I think we just all look forward to seeing what Zhang could do next. So now in contrast, not sure what was up with Deontay Wilder's corner, because I think that was wasn't that the MMA cut man in his corner? We always say, you know, it's a saying in boxing that there's only one voice in the corner. Peter Fury kind of alluded to that regarding Tyson Fury's last fight with Usyk. He said that he felt that there were too many voices in the corner. It's just one of those rules, because in that break you have 60 seconds, but you really have less than 60 seconds, because the fighter has to get over to the stool, sit down on the stool. The trainer has to get in the ring with all his, you know, the bucket, this, that, and the other, and all his tools, and then you don't quite have the full 60 seconds, because it, you know, 10 seconds before this end of the 60 seconds, you know, seconds out, that type thing. So my point is, you have about maybe 45 to 50 seconds to actually do your corner work, and in that moment a fighter can't really absorb a whole diatribe. A fighter can absorb maybe one or two ideas, either what you don't want them to do or what you need them to do in this next round coming up, and it's got to be crystal clear, and it's got to be simple as heck, because when your adrenaline's pumping like that, and you're also getting hit in the head or hit in the body, it's hard to formulate or absorb a lot of complicated ideas. So I don't know how effective the corner work was for Wilder, but on the other hand, maybe it didn't matter, because unfortunately it didn't look to me like Deontay had the tools to use to execute a game plan, which for him pretty much has to be set up your right hand. That's all you, I shouldn't say that's all he's got, but it's his powerful right hand that is the tool or the weapon of choice that could potentially stop ZHANG Zhilei. Except we know that Deontay doesn't have an effective jab, so how do you expect him to set that up? He also doesn't have very effective footwork, so again, how does he just even position himself to land a straight right? In the past, I think he had success in punching while his opponent was punching, and then he would, you know, he was able to clip more than a few of his opponents with that powerful right hand. But that ability has since evaporated from maybe 4 fights ago. Well, maybe from the Tyson Fury 2 onward. In any case, I don't know that it helped to have Don House chiming in the corner, but then again, you know, what would have helped? Big question mark. Maybe nothing. So hopefully Wilder decides to retire from after this fight and sail off into the sunset with his multiple millions. Enjoy life with his family. I hope he does not fight ever again, unless it's a gimme fight. And I sure hope there's not a lot of boxing talk about who should Wilder fight next. Where do you have him in the top 10? Just take him out. I said this a while back. I said this back in March. Get him out of the top 10. Don't tease him like that to think that he could entertain another title run. You got to be cruel to be kind sometimes, and I think, in all fairness, we should just say thank you to Deontay and wish him well. As you Brits would say, off you go then, right? Be seeing you, off you go. Yeah, so what did you guys think of that fight? Tell me your favorite moments in the fight. Who do you think Zhilei Zhang should fight next? Where do you think Deontay should have his retirement party? Let me know in the comments below.